Pivot Bio proven, we really want to back up and just look at what it is fundamentally. It's a living organism.
Adhere to the corn roots, and that will supply nitrogen then throughout the season.
What does that mean for me as a farmer? When I need my nitrogen, at the most critical point in the plant's life, I'm going to have a steady dose of nitrogen minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day.
And it's simple. Using the product is awesome. You dump in a couple of jugs and there you have 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen. I mean, you couldn't get much easier than that.
So right now farmers are putting on nitrogen and having to think, oh, I could lose a certain percentage of that. So if you're going to pay for something, you want to have it there.
I get something that's going to help me make a return on my investment, but I also get something that's going to help me protect the water quality. It's multi-generational. It's protecting the soil. It's reducing our need on synthetically created nitrogen.
It'd be really nice to be able to put it on and say, I know I'm going to get that much. That's a big game changer.
I have 100% confidence in the company, Pivot Bio. They are producing a product for the same reason that I'm farming, being better stewards of the land and making us more profitable in doing that.
One of the things that Pivot Bio has done
to make a big difference going forward.
We're changing the way we manage nitrogen based on that box. When you look at the millions upon millions of living organisms that's in that box, what that can do for our operation between now and harvest is amazing.
It's already a product that's going to be sustainable. It's already a product that's helping make sure you've got the nitrogen there and frankly get more for our money.
When a company like Pivot Bio comes along and offers a really attractive product that protects ROI, but also allows us to feel like we're part of a solution to what's a very known problem, we're participating in a really significant change in agriculture. And that's fun to get excited about,
Pivot Bio proven, we really want to back up and just look at what it is fundamentally. It's living organisms that make nitrogen for our corn plants.
Pivot Bio provides microbes that are going to adhere to the corn roots, and that will supply nitrogen then throughout the season.
What does that mean for me as a farmer? When I need my nitrogen at the most critical point in the plant's life, I'm going to have a steady dose of nitrogen minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day.
And it's simple. Using the product is awesome. You dump in a couple of jugs and there you have 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen. I mean, you couldn't get much easier than that.
So right now farmers are putting on nitrogen and having to think, oh, I could lose a certain percentage of that. So if you're going to pay for something, you want to have it there.
I get something that's going to help me make a return on my investment, but I also get something that's going to help me protect the water quality. It's multi-generational. It's protecting the soil. It's reducing our need on synthetically created nitrogen.
It'd be really nice to be able to put it on and say, I know I'm going to get that much. That's a big game changer.
I have 100% confidence in the company, Pivot Bio. They are producing a product for the same reason that I'm farming, being better stewards of the land and making us more profitable in doing that.
One of the things that Pivot Bio has done so well is the way that they've handled their data lends a ton of credibility. We have individual grower data. We also have incredibly well-built, backed university study data.
Now you've seen enough data and you're seeing enough years behind Pivot Bio that people are beginning to say, this is something that's going to continue to make a big difference going forward.
We're changing the way we manage nitrogen based on that box. When you look at the millions upon millions of living organisms that's in that box, what that can do for our operation between now and harvest is amazing.
It's already a product that's going to be sustainable. It's already a product that's helping make sure you've got the nitrogen there and frankly, get more for our money.
When a company like Pivot Bio comes along and offers a really attractive product that protects ROI, but also allows us to feel like we're part of a solution to what's a very known problem, we're participating in a really significant change in agriculture. And that's fun to get excited about, you know?
Pivot Bio proven, we really want to back up and just look at what it is fundamentally. It's living organisms that make nitrogen for our corn plants.
Pivot Bio provides microbes that are going to adhere to the corn roots, and that will supply nitrogen then throughout the season.
What does that mean for me as a farmer? When I need my nitrogen at the most critical point in the plant's life, I'm going to have a steady dose of nitrogen minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day.
And it's simple. Using the product is awesome. You dump in a couple of jugs and there you have 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen. I mean, you couldn't get much easier than that.
So right now farmers are putting on nitrogen and having to think, oh, I could lose a certain percentage of that. So if you're going to pay for something, you want to have it there.
I get something that's going to help me make a return on my investment, but I also get something that's going to help me protect the water quality. It's multi-generational. It's protecting the soil. It's reducing our need on synthetically created nitrogen.
It'd be really nice to be able to put it on and say, I know I'm going to get that much. That's a big game changer.
I have 100% confidence in the company, Pivot Bio. They are producing a product for the same reason that I'm farming, being better stewards of the land and making us more profitable in doing that.
One of the things that Pivot Bio has done so well is the way that they've handled their data lends a ton of credibility. We have individual grower data. We also have incredibly well-built, backed university study data.
Now you've seen enough data and you're seeing enough years behind Pivot Bio that people are beginning to say, this is something that's going to continue to make a big difference going forward.
We're changing the way we manage nitrogen based on that box. When you look at the millions upon millions of living organisms that's in that box, what that can do for our operation between now and harvest is amazing.
It's already a product that's going to be sustainable. It's already a product that's helping make sure you've got the nitrogen there and frankly, get more for our money.
When a company like Pivot Bio comes along and offers a really attractive product that protects ROI, but also allows us to feel like we're part of a solution to what's a very known problem, we're participating in a really significant change in agriculture. And that's fun to get excited about, you know?
Pivot Bio proven, we really want to back up and just look at what it is fundamentally. It's living organisms that make nitrogen for our corn plants.
Pivot Bio provides microbes that are going to adhere to the corn roots, and that will supply nitrogen then throughout the season.
What does that mean for me as a farmer? When I need my nitrogen at the most critical point in the plant's life, I'm going to have a steady dose of nitrogen minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day.
And it's simple. Using the product is awesome. You dump in a couple of jugs and there you have 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen. I mean, you couldn't get much easier than that.
So right now farmers are putting on nitrogen and having to think, oh, I could lose a certain percentage of that. So if you're going to pay for something, you want to have it there.
I get something that's going to help me make a return on my investment, but I also get something that's going to help me protect the water quality. It's multi-generational. It's protecting the soil. It's reducing our need on synthetically created nitrogen.
It'd be really nice to be able to put it on and say, I know I'm going to get that much. That's a big game changer.
I have 100% confidence in the company, Pivot Bio. They are producing a product for the same reason that I'm farming, being better stewards of the land and making us more profitable in doing that.
One of the things that Pivot Bio has done so well is the way that they've handled their data lends a ton of credibility. We have individual grower data. We also have incredibly well-built, backed university study data.
Now you've seen enough data and you're seeing enough years behind Pivot Bio that people are beginning to say, this is something that's going to continue to make a big difference going forward.
We're changing the way we manage nitrogen based on that box. When you look at the millions upon millions of living organisms that's in that box, what that can do for our operation between now and harvest is amazing.
It's already a product that's going to be sustainable. It's already a product that's helping make sure you've got the nitrogen there and frankly, get more for our money.
When a company like Pivot Bio comes along and offers a really attractive product that protects ROI, but also allows us to feel like we're part of a solution to what's a very known problem, we're participating in a really significant change in agriculture. And that's fun to get excited about, you know?
Welcome to our program, and thank you for joining us as we share some exciting results from the field and Pivot Bio Proven, a microbe that applies nitrogen to your corn crop throughout the growing season. My name's Lindsay. I'll be your host this morning from the Pivot Bio offices here in Ames, Iowa. 2020 has been an unusual year for everyone, but one familiar sight is seeing combines rolling in the field. This season has delivered some impressive harvest results from growers who use Pivot Bio Proven on their crop, and we're excited to share those with you today. We've got a full program ahead with a fantastic lineup of speakers that will dig into Pivot Bio's performance in the field so far this season. Regional Technical Services Managers Colin Miller and Leron Geesting will share their observations from the season, and we'll hear from growers who are using Pivot Bio Proven on their operations. Strategic Account Manager Jim Kelly will share his perspective on Pivot Bio Proven, and Pivot Bio agronomist Nick Thompson will go over a groundbreaking whole plant nitrogen study going on at Pivot Bio. We also have special guest director of agronomy, Dan Poston, who will share his perspective on the results he's seeing from the hundreds of thousands of Pivot Bio acres nationally, and the comprehensive year-on-year data that shows Pivot Bio Proven's performance in the field. Also, be sure to stay tuned for Q&A with Leron, Colin, and Nick as they'll answer audience questions about the exciting things going on at Pivot Bio. Before we get into the core of our program, let's watch just a short video that explains how our product works. Take a look.
Pivot Bio has introduced a new microbial product called Pivot Bio Proven that captures nitrogen from the air, converts it to a form corn can use, and then applies this nutrient directly to the corn plant daily. This new product consists of nitrogen-producing microbes that are applied during planting. Once the seeds and microbes are together in the ground, the roots have immediate access to the Pivot Bio Proven microbes. As the seed germinates and the roots reach out into the soil, the microbes adhere to the root structure, capture nitrogen gas from the air, convert it to ammonia, and feed it directly to the corn roots. Pivot Bio Proven microbes are not washed away by weather events, nor do they volatilize into the air, which makes them a reliable nitrogen alternative to maximize yield potential.
With me now is Colin Miller, Technical Services Field Manager for the Eastern Corn Belt. Colin, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in your area this fall.
Things have been going really well for the Eastern Corn Belt. We're a little bit behind the rest of the country in terms of harvest, but as the results are coming in, we're seeing a very positive response. Between 4.5 to 15 bushel is kind of the range that we're seeing mostly. We have seen a very small amount of non-responsive fields, so we're diving deeper into the information to see what happened there. But overall, very happy with the performance thus far.
What has been the reaction from growers to the results this season?
Very positive. Yield results are always really fun to see. But the growth differences that they're seeing as well lead the farmers to believe that our product is making a difference in the field. Larger root masses, larger stalk diameters, healthier plants, especially towards the end of the season, as that plant begins to fire on the bottom third, it was very clear to see that the untreated sections of the field were firing before the treated, which meant that that plant carried nitrogen later into the season. So, not just in terms of yield, but also in terms of plant health, the growers have been very responsive.
And what did it feel like to see some of those summer observations turn into yield this fall?
It is very rewarding. Like I mentioned, it's not a guarantee that you're going to see yield when you see those kind of growth differences. But it does mean that you have a healthier plant that probably will have the ability to yield more if all the conditions are met. Luckily, in Ohio and in Michigan, Indiana, and some of the Northeast, we did have good conditions to allow those healthier plants to see higher yields.
Now, I'd like you to talk just a little bit about some of the product stewardship practices that give Pivot Bio Proven the right conditions to succeed.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that product stewardship is one of the largest defining factors in how the product's going to perform. We need to be vigilant with the product and make sure that we're taking a live microbe from the package and ensuring that it makes its way into the ground and is able to colonize on the root. A couple things that we want to watch out for is around product handling, making sure that product stays between 32 and 70 degrees. We don't want it to freeze or get too hot because the microbe can die. In terms of conditions early that could limit our ability to colonize, a few watchouts that we've had in areas are planting into very cold conditions, soil that may not be up to temp yet. Watch out for heavy rainfall right after. If there's an anaerobic condition that happens because of flooding, then the microbe may not be able to survive that as well. And the last is kind of a combination of those two things, which is delayed emergence. If the corn is planted and the microbes are sitting there in the soil waiting for its food source, which is coming from the root, and that root takes 3 weeks to emerge, there is a chance that microbe's not going to be able to survive that. But we didn't see those conditions this year, and I think that's why we're seeing such positive yield results.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I want to say thank you to all of the growers that helped us out this year with the plots that we put in. All the information that we're getting coming in now is very valuable and is going to allow us to better place this product in the future and hopefully see greater success.
Well, thank you, Colin, for joining us, and congratulations on those exciting results you're seeing in your territory. Joining us now remotely is Leron Geesting, a technical services field manager for Indiana. Leron, what are you seeing this fall in your region?
Thanks. That's a great question. You know, one of the things that's a lot of fun in this type of work is to put in the effort and to see the results, come in as we harvest. So as harvest has now arrived, we're seeing a lot of excitement. We're seeing a lot of folks reporting their results for the year, and it's just been a lot of fun to be a part of that.
Tell us about some of the results that you've seen in your area with Pivot Bioproven.
Well, as we've been in the field and combines are rolling, we're seeing people reporting, of course, positive yield responses. We're seeing differences in plant size, plant growth, plant color. Again, just a lot of positive results. People reporting, 5 bushel yield increase, 10 bushel yield increase across a variety of different geographic areas.
What's been the reaction from the growers to the harvest results?
Well, naturally, there's a lot of excitement. If you look just at the sales growth alone, we've increased our sales with existing customers. We've increased sales, obviously, with new customers. And so that speaks volumes just to the excitement that's out there. As many of our reps are themselves customers and farmers, they're seeing firsthand the results, and of course gives them a lot of confidence to go out and sell the product. So there's a very big groundswell in the field, and we're seeing a lot of excitement across our sales reps as well as our customers.
What are some ways that you've seen growers incorporate Pivot Bioproven with their existing nitrogen programs?
We've seen a lot of different adjustments, I would say, to the nitrogen program specifically, whether it be reducing the total nitrogen applied. Some folks aren't reducing nitrogen, but they're changing their application timing. Some aren't changing very much of anything. They're just adding that product on. And really what we're seeing is it's building a bridge between when that plant is able to absorb the nitrogen that we've applied versus when conditions of whether it be hot and dry or cool and wet, and the roots can't access that nitrogen that was applied, it can still and always access the nitrogen that we're producing with our microbe.
Do you think that growers in your area would consider reducing their synthetic nitrogen use after seeing Pivot Bioproven perform on their acres?
Sure. In fact, we work with a couple sales reps, and I'm sure there's others in many different states and geographies as well, that are, as a separate business, they're doing a lot of nitrogen management. And so we've got some really professional folks that are measuring nitrogen use efficiency. And particularly as we add our product to the mix, we're going to see some changes and some rate reduction, even with our first generation product. Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, just for me, if I'm going to speak directly to the grower, I want to say, don't take my word for it. Ask your neighbors, give it a try on your own farm. We do that with every product. We need to see it ourselves. And so seeing is believing. I encourage you to give it a try, to look into the data, talk to your neighbors, talk to your sales reps, and just find out for yourself how Proven can add value to your farm.
Thanks, Leron. It's nice to hear that everything you saw this summer is showing up at harvest time. Joining me now is Jim Kelly, Strategic Account Manager for the East region. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
Tell me a little bit about your role.
Yeah, so I live in northern Indiana. I cover Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, and Ohio, and I work directly with some of the larger strategic accounts, those farmers that manage and operate more acreage and maybe have their own unique issues and problems to farming that they run into. And I also work alongside the reps out there. If a rep wants to bring me in meeting with some of these larger accounts as a support role for him, I work alongside with him too.
And can you tell us a little bit about the results you've been seeing with who you're working with?
Very similar to Colin and Leron. A lot of really nice yield increases. So in between maybe that 4 and 5 to 12, 13, 14 bushel yield bumps. And similar to what they said, I think you'll see it average out in that 6 to 7 bushel range, but really nice return on investment, really nice increases out there in the field.
Jim, can you tell me a little bit about how growers are actually implementing Pivot Bio proven in their nutrient management plans?
Most of the growers I'm working with, 96% of the growers I'm working with are maintaining their current nitrogen program. So if they've been putting 200, 220 pounds, in the field, they're maintaining that. They're putting this on top, above and beyond that current program that they're using. So they're using it purely as a yield play. I mean, they're trying to push those acres as hard as they can, and they're looking at Pivot as a product that can push those acres farther. A lot of them are having really good success, and they're doing maybe small trials, maybe 40 acres where they're cutting back, say 25 pounds. So they're using this as 25 and they're cutting back their standard program 25 pounds, and they're seeing great results there too. So I think as we move down the road, you'll begin to see more and more farmers cut back on the amount of nitrogen that they're putting. So maybe in the fall, they're putting 25 or 40 pounds less and using this in furrow at planting time to make up for that nitrogen that they didn't put down. Or maybe they're skipping a side dress on a field to see how that plays out. I think you can do it either way. Most guys feel more comfortable with their standard program and using this as a yield bump on top of that. But there's a lot of guys that are doing some testing and trying some neat stuff out there too.
What would you tell growers who are potentially considering using Pivot Bio Proven on their acres?
There's lots of different types of nitrogen, and this is a new type, but it is maybe the most bioavailable, the best type that you're going to find out there. That relationship that microbe has with the corn plant, and that symbiotic relationship that the two have together, creates such a nice environment for that ammonia to feed that corn plant. And it's just a great source of nitrogen for that corn plant. It's a unique source. There's no other source like it out there. And in combination with your other nitrogen products, it's awesome.
Thanks, Jim. Next, we're going to hear from growers Brian Tom and Mike Denton, who used Pivot Bio Proven on their farms this season with some amazing results.
Mike Denton, Princeton, Illinois. We're standing out here in front of our family farm. We farm about 2,500 acres here 90 miles southwest of Chicago. Pivot Bio Proven here today on our farm. We saw an 8 bushel yield advantage over the untreated check. That makes us really excited. Our ground is really good, and we weren't sure if we were going to see that kind of yield, but that was a big bump for us.
My name is Brian Tom, and I farm in southeastern Illinois with my brother-in-law. After seeing our preliminary results this year, we've taken out 2 plots where we had check strips, and we saw a 9 bushel advantage in one plot, and just about 30 minutes ago, we got into another plot and saw about a 6 bushel advantage on it there. So that's the type of performance that we're starting to really depend on from it and starting to believe in. So I think going forward, it becomes an easier and easier decision for us.
On our farm, we applied nitrogen at 3 different times, 3 or 4, just depends on the farm. We're doing it pre-plant. We're doing some 2x2 with the planter. Then we're doing at least 1 pass of Y-drop nitrogen, and in some cases coming back twice. So the Proven really helps us. If we know we have season-long nitrogen fixation from Proven, whether or not, as the saying goes, we can count on that, and it'll keep us from having to do an extra pass. And on those years when it rains a lot, we know it's still going to be there.
So getting large weather events after you put down some nitrogen, especially a couple weeks after it, if it's converted to nitrate, that's always disappointing to go through. You want the water, but you don't want that much water. You want it to be spread out nicely. And that's where Proven has really kind of almost alleviated a little bit of stress that goes along with those weather events. And I think it's helped kind of show its place on our farm with its ROI. You know, when you look at what it's replacing on synthetic nitrogen or adding to your yield, it's priced as a premium form of nitrogen, but it's pretty competitive, pound for pound for what it's delivering to a really well stabilized form of nitrogen.
Seeing the results we did here today of 8 bushel better with the Proven versus untreated check allows us to go back and think a little harder about, are we going to dial back our nitrogen? Are we going to maybe not have an application that we made? I mean, those are ROI things that really add to the bottom line. Yield is one thing, but cutting things back also is really going to help. So, I'm really excited just to see the results here today, and the possibilities that it would open up for next year is exciting.
I don't think farmers want to be wasteful. It's not in their nature to be wasteful or to harm the environment. And that's another great thing about Pivot Bioproven is because of how the mechanism of how it's working, it's staying right there on the roots. It has virtually zero opportunity to leach away from the corn plant. So it's a very safe form of nitrogen, both economically and environmentally. We're planning on incorporating this as a pretty standard part of our management plan moving forward.
It's always great to hear from growers out in the field. And now we'll introduce Pivot bioagronomist Nick Thompson, who will go into the whole plant nitrogen study the agronomy team is working on. Nick, tell us about the study.
So this is a study on growers' fields where field agronomists, sales representatives, as well as growers traveled to their studies where Pivot Bioproven was next to untreated controls. These trials were placed on growers' fields. An example here that you see where we have Pivot Bioproven next to an untreated control. And we also see a soils layer underneath that. And so growers, field agronomists, and sales representatives were tasked to go to these fields, collect representative samples in like soil types, send that in for analysis where we get our nitrogen concentration, our dry weight, and calculate the pounds of nitrogen per acre recovered. And this was done primarily at R1 and R4. As we switch to the next visual, we see that on average across 55 of these locations and 88 sampling points, we had an increase of 17.3 pounds of nitrogen per acre, around at a 69% win rate. When we just segregate out these 69% wins, we see that we improved 39 pounds of nitrogen per acre in 2020. And this basically mirrors our 2019 data where we saw 38 pounds of improvement. So one might ask, what happened on the left side of this chart in these unresponsive sites? Well, if you recall, these are from growers' sites and growers' management practices in very uncontrolled environments. And so it is likely that, a smaller sample size, we were taking 3 plants per treatment zone. So we have relatively a small sample size in the scale of these trials. And so there's a lot of variability in this. And that's why we really have to look at this across all 88 sampling points and not just these individual bars. The next visual shows whole plant nitrogen on the first bar graph, whole plant dry weight in the middle, and the whole plant nitrogen per acre on the right. And what you'll notice is that Pivot Bioproven isn't necessarily improving your nitrogen percent in the plant, as we see our untreated control and our treated zone with proven averages just slightly better in nitrogen concentration. But where we see this increase in pounds of nitrogen per acre is driven by the improvement in dry weight. And so what Pivot Bioproven is doing is actually increasing the size of your plant while it's not diluting the nitrogen concentration in that plant, leading to an increased nitrogen recovery on an acre basis. We see a 0.6 ton per acre advantage in corn dry matter with that same 69% win rate, since this is driven primarily by the dry matter. And of these responsive sites, we had about a 1 ton increase per acre. Next, we look at our wet weight versus our dry weight. So wet weight, we were getting 2.1 tons per acre advantage coming off the field, dried down to a complete dry matter basis. That was 0.6 tons per acre. And so what this data allows us to do is we can actually predict how responsive these sites can be based on the nitrogen concentration, the total nitrogen that we have in the plant. So harvest index is a measurement of the grain or the nutrient removed out of the entire plant biomass. So this is pretty steady, right around 60%. In this study by Bender, we had a 58% harvest index. And so we use this and we know the amount of nitrogen we have in the plant, we can estimate the potential yield advantage from these sites. And so if you look at across all locations, we had about a 9.8 to 24.7 pounds per acre improvement across these sites, which leads to about a 5.7 to 14.3 bushel potential yield response from those locations. And if you look at our responsive sites, where in 2020 we saw 39 pounds per acre, that's up to a 22 bushel per acre potential yield response that we can have at those locations. So in summary, Pivot Bio Proven is maintaining that nitrogen concentration while improving the plant size that you have in your field, leading to an overall improvement in the total nitrogen recovery in your field locations.
Nick, what's the overall goal for this study?
The overall goal of the study was to determine how much nitrogen per acre Pivot Bio Proven is adding to a grower's field on a grower's field. These are uncontrolled environments. For the most part, like growers' practices are implemented. These are growers' management systems on their farms, on their soils. And so we really want to see how this product's performing throughout the Midwest on these variable environments that we see.
What are some unexpected observations you've seen?
Some unexpected observations that we saw was actually not improving the nitrogen concentration in the plant. We were expecting that hopefully we could improve the nitrogen concentration. A lot of times that's an indicator of how healthy a plant is. So if you were just to take a leaf sample, send it in for analysis, you might think, oh, this product's not working. This product hasn't worked for me, because you see the exact same nitrogen concentration in both samples, treated and untreated. But what we actually have is that bigger plant, which, you have to harvest the entire plant and get the dry weight. So it's a little bit more involved to actually see how we're improving this nitrogen uptake. This study allows growers to see what the yield potential of this product is, and allows us to understand that, hey, we're getting enough nitrogen in this plant to get a 20 bushel response. How do we unlock that potential?
Thank you, Nick. Up next, we have Pivot Bio's Director of Agronomy, Dan Poston, with some preliminary national harvest results and the power of Pivot Bio's data.
As we went into 2020, our biggest challenge was to figure out methodology and techniques to really measure the performance of a nitrogen fixing microbe in the field. How do you measure that? How do you visualize that? How do you put numbers on it? So as we step back into 2019, and now we look at 2020, you're in the nitrogen fixing microbe business. You could not have asked for 2 better years to really evaluate your nitrogen fixing microbe. 2019 was a very high nitrogen loss year across most of the corn growing region and the US as far as that goes. We had saturated wet conditions early. A lot of that, those wet conditions really continued through most of the growing season. And so nitrogen loss was high. And our microbe performed quite well in 2019 under those conditions. 2020 was exactly the opposite. It was a year where we had really high nitrogen use efficiency early. We had warm, moist conditions, but not excessively wet. So not only did our synthetic nitrogen stay in the field, we also had high rates of nitrogen mineralization if there was significant organic matter present at a given location. So synthetic nitrogen stayed put, and mineralized nitrogen became pretty available. So that really occurred through about the 1st of July. And then many regions of the Midwest and other parts of the country really turned off into a pretty disastrous drought. So if a nitrogen fixing microbe could perform in a year where you really didn't use that much nitrogen early, and then you had yield limiting situations later, then you've got a pretty good read on the value of that microbe. To sum it up in its simplest form, in environments or areas of fields that lost nitrogen, we saw an effect of the microbe in yield. And we set those trials up so that they had 100% nitrogen, and they had minus 50 pounds of nitrogen in a separate area or a separate block. So if you look at, say, Pivot Bio Proven in that 100% nitrogen environment, we're seeing responses maybe in the 2 to 4 bushel range. In 2019, that would have probably been double that. That would have probably been 4 to 8, maybe 9 or 10 bushels, because entire fields lost nitrogen in 2019. If you go to the reduced areas of those same trials, the response to Pivot Bio Proven is well over 6 bushels per acre. So those reduced areas or reduced treatments you can think of as areas of fields that lose nitrogen in the field. And that's what I see as the real value of our nitrogen fixing microbes like Pivot Bioproven, is that they can help you recover yield in those areas of the field that are losing nitrogen for various reasons. Those may be sandy pockets that lose nitrogen to leaching or runoff, or poorly drained areas that lose nitrogen to denitrification. So it really is a nitrogen or a yield stabilizer tool across your entire field. We put a lot of effort into measuring microbe performance by methods other than yield. So did it increase plant size? Did it affect plant height? Did it affect leaf biomass, plant biomass? All measures of microbe performance. So to give you an idea of one data set there, we had customers send in whole plant samples from around R1 to R4. So they collect plants out of the field, proven treated and untreated, and they send those samples in, and we weigh those samples, dry those samples, analyze those samples for tissue analysis at a commercial lab. And we noted in those that about 70% of the time, those plants actually had more pounds of nitrogen per acre. So that was an indication that, hey, the microbe was present, it was doing something in the plant, and that the microbe had really set those plants up for success. As we've gone through this growing season and we've watched a ton of data come in that we did not really have in 2019. So a ton of soil data, a ton of tissue data. All of our whole plant sampling efforts, our leaf sampling efforts, really have indicated that this microbe was present. It did what it was supposed to do, and it did it at a high percentage of locations. So from that standpoint, I'm really excited that the microbe got out there and it did what it was supposed to do.
Thank you, Dan. It's impressive to see the results from around the country and dig into that data on how Pivot Bioproven is making a difference on so many operations. I'll bring Colin back now to talk just a little bit about how you talk to farmers about this new exciting approach to delivering nitrogen to their crop.
Yeah, so when we're talking to farmers, we really want to build value in what Pivot Bio brings to the operation. A couple different areas where I think it brings a lot of value. The first would be its predictability. We know for certain that starting at V5, we're going to be getting a daily shot of nitrogen clear through R2. That's really important when side dress applications sometimes can be iffy, relying on conditions to activate, or worrying about getting too much rain and having runoff. This we know for certain is going to be there. The second piece is productivity. So based on the yield results that we've seen from previous years and a lot of what we're seeing already this year, we're averaging 6 bushel per acre, leaving the nitrogen rates constant and side by sides. With that productivity, we're seeing a return on investment for the customers, which, like we talked about earlier, is rare in sustainable ag, that we have something that lets us be good stewards to the land, but also see something that provides a return. And the last part is about being weatherproof. You may have seen our ads before about the nitrogen being there, whether or not. If there's weather or if you don't get any rain, this is not a product that requires rain to be active, and it's a source of nitrogen that does not leach. So even if you get a bunch of rain, it ends up staying usable by the corn plant. So those are the kind of things that we talk about with customers, building the value of Pivot Bioproven.
For growers who are excited to get started this next growing season, what kind of programs can they take advantage of?
Yeah, so we have traditional, agricultural discounts of volume and everything like that. But the one to pay attention to right now is a early purchase discount. It'll save growers $2 per acre if they purchase by December 31st.
Thank you, Colin. And thank you for spending time with us this morning to learn more about Pivot Bio and our nitrogen-producing microbial product for corn, Pivot Bioproven. If you'd like to learn more about how Pivot Bioproven can provide a more predictable, more productive source of nitrogen for your operation, go to pivotbio.com. There you can find a sales representative in your area and hear from growers who have used Pivot Bioproven. Also, please join us for the Q&A session with Colin, Leron, and agronomist Nick Thompson in just a few minutes. You can submit your questions in the Q&A or chat feature on your Zoom platform. Before we begin the Q&A, we'll share a short video on why Pivot Bio is nitrogen's turning point. Take a look.
Just breathe. It's the essence of life. Every breath can give us energy, joy, and peace. Oxygen supports so much of our life, yet makes up precious little of our atmosphere. Almost 80% of the air is actually nitrogen. In the right form, it is one of the building blocks of life for humans, animals, and plants. The crops we grow rely on tiny microbes in the soil that turn nitrogen from the air into life. It's biology at its finest. As human life flourished and food production increased, our soils weren't able to keep up. So farmers relied on the only tool available, synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, to feed us all. Without it, half of the world's food supply would not exist. Yet synthetic nitrogen's massive scale is on an earth-altering course, accounting for 2% of all greenhouse gas emissions. This chemical process pulls nitrogen out of the air and transforms it into fertilizer, with almost half never reaching the crops it was intended to fertilize. Nitrogen ends up in our waterways, contributing to dead zones in our oceans and lakes. Synthetic nitrogen has also had an unintended impact on our soils. The microbes stopped converting nitrogen into fuel to help grow our crops. Faced with the challenge that we must produce 50% more food by 2050, our future urgently needs a better way, and farmers deserve a better nitrogen right now. We are at a turning point. Pivot Bio has introduced a revolutionary biological product that harnesses nature's ability to deliver plant-ready nitrogen without the negative side effects of synthetic fertilizer. By empowering farmers to grow crops in a better way, we'll boost farmer productivity, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve air and water quality, and help sustainably feed our growing global population. By using our microbes on just half of the corn, wheat, and rice crops around the world, we'd have the power to reduce emissions equivalent to planting 16 billion trees, all by changing the way we deliver nitrogen to plants. This is nitrogen's turning point.
Okay, well, thank you all for sticking around here for the Q&A session. My name's Colin Miller. Again, I'm the Technical Services Field Manager for the Northeast U.S. I'm joined by Nick Thompson, our agronomist, Leron Geesting, the TSM for Indiana, and then Jim Kelly, who is our Strategic Account Manager. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to all of our active service members as well as our veterans here on Veterans Day. And thank you again for sticking around to learn a little bit more about Pivot Bio. There's a Q&A session or a feature here on Zoom. If you have questions that you'd like for us to answer, go ahead and get those put in there and we will answer them to the best of our ability. We have a couple in here right now, so I just wanted to go ahead and kick it off. The first question was, how many pounds of N does Proven replace? The amount of N largely is dependent upon the environment, especially soil type. It can vary based on conditions, but the average that we see and what we advertise is 25 pounds. That is all happening between V5 and R2. So it's an excellent supplement to a side dress application. One other way to look at it, and a way that we talk about it with our customers, is that this 25 pounds of nitrogen is certainly making its way into the corn plant. So if you're looking for an equivalent based on application of your side dress application, it would take 40 pounds of 28 to equal the 25 pounds that we're putting in to the plant. So again, 25 to 40 is the range that we're looking at. Another question that I have here is, can I mix Proven with other starter fertilizers? Nick, I will go ahead and kick this question to you if you'd like to answer that.
Yep, great question. And so this is a very common question we receive. And yes, you can. We do have some limitations, but as far as carriers, 1034.0, 624.6 are compatible with our product. We do run into some issues with some sulfurs and some coppers, but we're currently revamping our compatibility testing, and we'll have reports to work with growers on their starter fertilizer systems to make sure that our product does go in the ground as a living organism.
Thank you. One question that we get around the starter fertilizers is what do we do if we are not set up to apply any products in the furrow. We do want to let you know we do have an equipment program that can help fund in-furrow application systems on the planter. What that would require is a 520 acre commitment over the course of 3 years. That would get you $7,500 up front to fund that system for 3 years. So if you don't have in-furrow on the planter, but you have interest in trying Pivot Bio Proven out, that's one way to do it cost effectively. Another question we have here, there's a number of planters that are using a band of fertilizer along each side of the seed placement, usually within 1 inch. Has any work been done using this type of placement? So I assume that this customer is talking about the Furrow jet from Precision, where you have a band of fertilizer going straight down and then 2 more exiting to the walls of the furrow. Between 3/4 of an inch and an inch into the soil is where that application is being pushed. So we have tried this with customers in the past that have used furrow jets. We have seen it work. We have also seen it not work. We don't know definitively if the furrow jet is going to be an issue. What some people do to avoid any problems is they will plumb the system so that Proven is only being dispensed out of the center stream, so it's still being applied within the furrow. We have had people apply pushing Proven through all 3 entry points and have seen it work. One thing I would note there is the importance of emergence, because you're putting that microbe further away from the seed inside of the seed furrow. So if your plant takes 2 or 3 weeks to emerge, it's that much longer that it's going to be before the root reaches a point where the microbe is able to attach itself to the root. So as long as you don't hit any big weather issues or you get good emergence, I don't think there's any issues using furrow jets. Anyone else on the panel have a response to that? All right. Another question: how is application rate needed for Proven? So what is the application rate? 12.8 ounces per acre is what we use. Our product comes in a 4-gallon container, and that container will do 40 acres. So you may have seen before we started some growers applying Proven in the tanks on their planters right before going across the field. What a lot of folks will do is mix up a batch of 40 or 80 acres of starter fertilizer, dump this in over the top and go. That's really the easiest way to get that applied. Another question, the webinar says harvest results live, yet I did not see any harvest results in today's webinar. I tell you what, let's kick to Leron on this one if you'd like to speak a little bit about why we don't have yield reports ready to go quite yet for the Eastern Corn Belt.
Sure. So as harvest results come in, for one thing, we don't have as many data sets in maybe as we would like to at this point for 2 reasons. If you're a farmer, most of us, we wait till we're finished to pull that data out of the cab and get it all submitted. And then once it is submitted, we need to submit it to our intent partners for sort of some review and cleanup so that data is concise and consistent across all the parameters. And then we want to compile that. And at some point in time, some folks won't get their data in until much later. And at some point in time, we want to submit a complete set of data. So where do we draw the line is really the question. When do we stop adding more data to our set? So we're trying to get a good amount of data in, get it cleaned up, and get it into a format that's easy to read and understand. And it's just going to take a little time. We hope, here in this year yet, to have some really good results that we can publish.
Thanks, Leron. And we have had plenty of anecdotal evidence come in over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I got a video from one of my reps in New York there last night, pulling a field out late in the evening. He saw 16 bushel, which is a incredible response. And just to talk a little bit about what we're seeing here compared to the rest of the country, which I think is really interesting. The conditions were right this year for proven to work in the Eastern Corn Belt. In my territory so far, I've only heard of a handful of non-responsive fields, 4 or 5. Most of those had other plots on the farm that did perform. I had one grower that had no response in one field, and in a field right next to it, he saw 24 bushel. Which is an incredible response. I would say the majority of what we're hearing is falling between that 6 to 10 bushel range. Again, taking into account the non-responsive fields, that may bring it down a little bit. I still feel as though we're going to settle in. You saw during that nitrogen study how our nitrogen content within the plant mirrors kind of what happened last year. And I think the same is going to happen for our harvest results in terms of yield and in terms of win rate. I do think we'll settle out around that 6 bushel to the acre with a 70% win rate. And those are numbers that I'm absolutely thrilled about. We are going to be releasing yield information as soon as we have it. They'll be sent out via emails and marketing blasts. So if you're signed up to get emails from us, you should receive some of that. And then, of course, once we have all the data in and compiled, we will be releasing a 2020 yield report that will take into account all the data points across the country. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Again, I think the reason for the delay is that Ohio is the Northeast U.S. is a little bit behind the western part of the country, where we have seen more yield results come in. I'd expect those to start coming in the next couple weeks here. Jim or Nick, anything you'd like to add?
I think you hit it on the head.
I think the harvest results out in Illinois, out in Nebraska, out west are looking great. The anecdotal evidence is right what you were talking about, Colin. Southern Ohio, we saw a lot of that 6 to 12 bushel bumps. But yeah, I think we should have that report within the next month or so, ideally, and we'll begin to really actually show not just the anecdotal what we're hearing from the growers in the field, but actually the real actual results from the combine. So
yeah, and we do actually have 2 data points, but they are both out of Maryland, both on irrigated sand ground. One field saw a 1 bushel advantage and the other saw a 20 bushel advantage. So we're seeing a lot of promising results. I think that this area is going to end up performing better than just about anywhere else in the country. And that can change in the future, but I'm really happy with what we're seeing so far. So we'll go ahead and move on here. A question: in Northwest Ohio, we had 5 inches of rain over a 2-day period a week after planting, followed by 2.5 months of no rain. What is the likelihood of pivot biomicrobes surviving these conditions? Nick, would you like to field that question?
Yeah. So actually, I'm in Northeast Indiana, so I understand where you're coming from, Tyler. We probably had similar weather patterns come through here, but as long as we did not see anaerobic conditions with that 5 inches of rain, so we didn't have ponding water. And I know in areas of the field you likely did have ponded water for several days, but so it's very likely that the microbes were not able to survive, underneath that anaerobic conditions in those ponds. But I would say for the majority of the fields, like in Indiana, Northeast Indiana, that water moved off quickly, and the microbes were likely able to survive. And I've taken plots off in Northeast Indiana and had success. With that dry period for 2.5 months that you're mentioning, I don't fear the microbe would would die in that dry. Actually, I know the microbe would not die in that environment unless the corn plant died. And I don't believe that was the case. But what I do fear in those drought conditions is we reduce the yield potential. So the microbe may have produced the nitrogen and put that nitrogen into the plant, but we're not able to mobilize that nitrogen from the lower stem to the ear because we've reduced the yield potential.
Thank you, Nick. And we saw, especially in Ohio in 2019, we saw, about as bad of conditions as you can get for this thing to work. And that more is a bunch of rain at planting and then even more rain right after planting. I think we hit a lot of fields that ended up getting flooded, had some crop damage from that, and then the microbe wasn't able to survive. However, this year, in a situation where we have a bunch of rain up front and then a dry spell, I think that actually is a really good condition for our product to be in that it does not need that rainfall to activate. As long as it can survive that initial shot of rain, I think you've got a really good chance at colonization. Would adding sugars to the in-furrow application improve the proven microbe's ability to produce nitrogen? Nick, I'm going to throw this one to you as well.
Yep. So I hear this one a lot as well. And thinking about it logically, it makes sense that adding sugars will help this microbe get off to a good start, a good foundation, and grow rapidly to colonize the roots. So where I believe these sugars will help out is actually colonization, giving them that food supply to grow rapidly. However, as an agronomy team, we have not tested sugar applications and see how that affects our microbe thoroughly. It may be something we're going to look at moving forward, but to this day, I don't have any data to back up those theories.
Thanks, Nick. Next question here. What has the response been with different soil types? I'll throw to Leron to answer this question.
So of course, there's going to be some at least subtle differences across geographic areas and soil types. Maybe the primary thing that we should remember is we're likely to see the best response in our lower organic matter soils. And we all know, some of the sands and places like that are going to be a little hotter and lower organic matter. So likely to see a better response there. One thing I would also add, for the growers and the folks who have already submitted yield data, that report that they get back from intent includes yield by soil type. And so we do see at least some differences there. Sometimes it's very consistent, sometimes it's not. And really that's a function of nitrogen, of course. It's said, at least internally oftentimes, that our product is not magic, it's not water, it's actually a nitrogen source. So if you're not deficient in nitrogen, there's likely not going to be as much of a response, if any, where our product is present. Anything you'd add, Nick, to that?
No, I think you got it. I mean, the soil type, I've seen it both ways, where high productive soils tend to do better and lower productive soils tend to do better. But I think for the most part, really stabilizing those yield results and the yield variability across the field is what you're seeing.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I was going to add on to there that, as I look at some of the data, soil type, I see, sandy soils that tend to leach, you get a really great result on some of those. But as you look at the data, it's almost like all soil types are responding well to it. It's some of the healthy ones, maybe it's increasing microbial health. I don't know, but Nick can probably help with that. But you look at some of those really good Illinois soils and you're seeing 8 bushels. Then you look at some of the sandy soils in Michigan and you're seeing 8 bushels. So it's becoming clear to me that it is all soil conditions. It's an effective product.
Thanks, Jim. And I think the main takeaway here is, we know that soil type can affect how our microbe produces nitrogen. We're still learning a lot about that. And you're going to hear throughout our answers on, we're still learning how this thing interacts with different aspects of application. And that's true. Our sample size has grown exponentially over the last 3 years, but we've really only had this thing in the field for 3 years. We've been working with it for closer to 7. But there's still new, as we increase the sample size and put it in new environments and see it react to different conditions, we're learning more about this microbe every day. So the more information we receive on how it performs, the better we'll be able to place it in the future. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next question here. So if you're using the Furrow jet, would you recommend using it through all 3 application spots or switch it to being only in the furrow? I don't think we have enough information to make a definitive statement on that one. Our product is labeled for an in-furrow application. So for that reason, I would say if you had the ability to only apply it through that center stream, I would go ahead and do it. However, if you don't have the ability to switch your plumbing over, I do think you can still get good colonization applying Pivot Bio Proven through all 3 streams of the Furrow jet. Any other opinions on that one, guys?
Obviously, the closer we keep the microbe to the root zone, that's what we're targeting. That's what we need, because those microbes are consuming the root exudates. So just as a general rule of thumb, if you're bound and determined to use it, get it as close to the seed furrow as you absolutely can.
Thanks, Leron. Next question here: development status of alternative pivot application methods for farmers who don't plan on using liquid starter. Is there a seed treatment coming in the future? So we are looking at different products moving forward. A seed treatment is something that has kind of been worked on in the background here over the last few years. We don't have an estimate on when that's going to be commercially available, but it's something we're trying to figure out. In terms of other products that we're looking at, our Gen 2 product is in large plot trials here this year. We're getting results from those trials now. We should be able to determine what strain of that second generation is the one we'll move forward with. I don't see it being commercially available for crop year 2021, but I do think after that you can expect a second generation of product to be coming. We're also looking at different crops. Wheat is the big one. We do have a wheat product called Return. However, it's only in furrow and it's only for spring wheat. So it's mostly only being used out west, your Dakotas and Colorado. Outside of that, Nick, is there anything you'd like to talk about with that second generation of product and what you're seeing?
We are seeing improvements over proven, but I think pretty much that's about all I can say when it comes to that product at this point.
Yeah. So we'll have plenty more information on that in the coming months. Just know we're getting it out of the field now. Things are looking positive. We'll expect more information to come out here in the next few months. How does the nitrogen study show how the product is working other than yield? Nick, I feel like you'd be best suited to answer this one.
Yep. So if you recall, this product is really increasing the factory, quote unquote. It's really increasing the plant size, the biomass of that plant in the field. And so, it just goes to show that, we're creating a larger plant where we can store more nitrogen in the plant. And that's why we're seeing those nitrogen increases per acre. And that is what is driving the yield. But so if you look at biomass harvest, for example, for forages and whatnot, other than yield, you're getting that increase in biomass if you are wanting to chop that corn.
Very good. And that kind of leads us to the next question here. It says, we are a big dairy. What have you seen on tons in terms of silage? So I've seen a couple plots come out. We had some research done in New York and Vermont. And Nick, I'll have you speak to this here in a second. But from what we saw, 3/4 ton per acre on silage is the advantage that we're seeing thus far. Some of the plots are seeing significantly more than that. I feel like it's got a great spot for dairy acres just because, we're able to see the growth differences in the plant early. While those may not translate into yield in terms of grain, we do know for silage that's going to increase your tonnage. So really happy with the information. I think we've got some studies being put together on silage that will come out around the same time as the yield report. Nick, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yep. So from our grower fields where we had those 88 sampling points, dry weight, we had 0.6 tons. So that's at 0% moisture in the plant. That's completely dried down. And a wet weight was up at 2.1 tons. So there is tremendous opportunity for this forage material.
Yeah, and in terms of quality, I'm not as familiar with, silage quality and how all that works. All I know is when they compared the sections of the field treated versus untreated, the quality of the grain did not change in the limited amount of samples that I saw. There may be more information coming out about that soon, but that's all I can really speak on at the moment. The next question, will you run out of product like you did last year? Jim, do you want to field this question?
Dave assured us we won't. So we've sold out, what, 2 years in a row? Yeah. Which is exciting, but also not good at all. We've upped our production capacity. We're really planning on being able to fulfill, just way beyond what, from an acreage standpoint. The answer is no, essentially. So there's a lot of production capacity type things that are going into the product this year to assure that we do not sell out.
Thanks, Jim. I always say our number one goal this year is to hit our sales goals. Our number two goal is to avoid selling out, because again, that happened the last 2 years. To alleviate some of the concerns there, we included that early purchase discount. So if you purchase by December 31st, you're going to get a $2 per acre discount. Hopefully that will move some sales forward and we can better estimate what our demand for the rest of the year will be. So there's a lesser chance of us actually selling out. Question here, how long will the product be alive once it arrives before planting? I'll go ahead and field this one. I think last year we were good for 10 weeks outside of cold storage. So our operations team has done an excellent job at understanding the shipping process and ensuring that we ship a live microbe and it's able to stay alive until that grower has to plant. So we take into account estimated plant dates and conditions during shipping, and put an emphasis on storage to make sure that it's going to survive that amount of time before it gets to the field. That amount of time, I believe, has grown due to strain optimization and different product quality improvements. I think we have another month or two added on top of that. That will be on the label when the product is shipped, so you'll have better information on that. But even when we were listed at 10 weeks, we'd be shipping towards the end of March, and that would last you clear through about the middle of June. So for the majority of circumstances, that would ensure that you have a product that does not expire. If it were to expire on you, we would replace that product free of charge. And another question here, do split seed firmer applications have any effect on performance? Anyone have a good answer for that one?
So, this product goes on a wide array of farmers using various different practices, various different pop-up fertilizer programs with different equipment. We have not teased out individual application methods to look at what product performs better than others. We're starting to work with some companies to look at how their equipment products may benefit our microbe, but to this point, we have not teased out individual systems to see how they affect performance, but we are looking at options going forward.
Thank you, Nick.
There was a good question on soil pH. Would you answer that while you're talking about?
Yep. So I did see that come up, and it went away. I don't know where it went.
Yeah.
It did disappear, but and I believe it was looking at more acidic pHs.
Well, it asked, was there a soil sweet spot, a pH sweet spot? Yeah.
So we know the sweet spot for corn, is between that 6.5, 6.8, 6.8, and that's really where we want to be, because that is where most nutrients, as pH affects nutrient availability, and that is where most nutrients are available to that corn plant. As we actually move to the basic or the acidic side of the pH scale, the nutrient availability changes for these different nutrients. And for nitrogen, it reduces on the low and the high end of our pH. So we'd really like to be in the middle just to maximize our corn's potential to yield and yield performance. But as you actually move to an acidic or a basic pH, and more likely acidic in this case, your nitrogen actually becomes less available. So our product should benefit actually low pH soils because the crop is actually not allowed or not able to recover as much nitrogen from the soil, where our product would be, place that nitrogen right into the plant. But overall, we would like to be at more of that 6.5 to 6.8 pH.
Thank you for catching that, guys. I know that one got buried a little bit. There was one other question that got buried around, is there any additional information from the research end? I would point you toward our website. I think there is some additional information about the research that's being done. That we also are working with some different universities to ensure that our product performs how we say it's going to. So there should be some university studies released over the coming months as well. So keep an eye out for that. All right, we're getting towards the end here, so we've got a couple more questions left to answer. First is, what is the cost per acre this year? Leron, do you want to go over the pricing structure?
Sure. So, pricing starts out at $20. As Colin mentioned before, that $2 discount before the end of the year is pretty significant. And then there are certain acre breaks where a person can qualify for additional discounts. Those are both acre based as well as percentage based. So we're not going to punish smaller farmers or smaller acreage amounts. So if a person commits to 50% or 100% of their acreage, they can get an additional $1 or $2. At this point, a lot of what we sell will probably be in that $15 range. But your sales rep has the ability to make a proposal certainly before you commit to anything. So I would really encourage that.
Thank you, Leron. I would say the majority of folks are paying somewhere between that $14 to $18 range, depending upon volume, and taking advantage of that early purchase discount. So purchasing before December 31st is going to ensure you the best price, and then we can get into more specifics about volume discounts that are available with conversations you're having with your sales reps. All right, one last question here and we'll wrap up. Thank you again to everyone sticking around. I'm thrilled to see how many people stayed through the end of this Q&A session. Really appreciate your time here this morning. Does high pH hard water as a carrier affect the product performance? Nick, this seems like the best question for you.
Yep. So actually, we are most scared of chlorinated water, so city water sources. Going into this year for our trialing efforts. So we actually made sure that all of our trials that the agronomy team put together was used as a carrier with well water or hard water in this case. And we are having good yield results. So we don't see any issues there. We're actually compatibility testing both chlorinated and hard water sources this winter. And so far it's looking like both water sources are a lot, actually very compatible for what we thought we would expect, especially on the chlorinated side.
That's great. Thank you, Nick. Well, again, thank you everyone for taking some time out of your day here today to learn some more about Pivot Bioproven. If you have questions for us, feel free to reach out. Go to the website. If you're not sure who your local sales rep would be, we do have a rep locator there to help you figure out how to secure a product. Keep an eye out for communications from us about performance that should be coming over the next few weeks as we get those harvest results in. If you have any other questions, definitely reach out. We'll answer them to the best of our ability. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.